Hello, my name is Jayson Sanders. I'm currently a Newberry High School graduate as well as dual enrollment student graduate from Piedmont Technical College, and I plan on going to Newberry College and possibly either going to um, USC or Clemson to get my master's, and if I decide to get my doctorate, well, I may also continue my education at either USC or Clemson or even Duke. Now, anyways, I have an interest in African history, world history in general, Christian history, Christian ethics, and basically anything concerning philosophy. And so, I would like to share some information on Juneteenth as well as some African and African American history. Now, first of all, I like to talk about the building of the establishment of Rosenwald schools. Now, these schools were funded obviously for African American children, specifically elementary school African American children. And before these schools, kids were educated in living rooms and in sort of cabin areas, and before these schools were built, there wasn't much funding for these schools. Now, the South wasn't really that financially wealthy or liquid in general, because ever since the events of the Civil War, the South has been not exactly poor, but not exactly fluent in terms of money. And even when the United States government intervened to try to generate more, to try to help the South, it was sort of a failed project to do. But anyways, Mr. Julius Rosenwald, a Jewish person of German ancestry, who was the owner of a wholesale clothing company called Roebuck, he decided to meet with Mr. Booker T. Washington at a fundraising event and talk to him about building some African American schools. And Mr. Rosenwald did not seem to have any sort of prejudices, and he seemed to have been more of an accepting man, like John Brown or the Grimke sisters. But anyways, he decided to fund the Rosenwald schools. And these were schools that were more well maintained. They had like sort of a sleek, sort of white wood design for the benefit of the children as well as the teachers. It is recorded that there were over 5,000 buildings that were built for things like housing for the teachers, as well as the actual classrooms. And when the children would get up to go to school, they had to walk there for sometimes at least a few miles. And so when they eventually got to the Rosenwald schools, they had to clean the classrooms up. They had to get a fire started with wood and a stove so that they can keep warm, and they had to gather their food together. And this is drastically different from schools today to a degree. And apparently, from what I've heard, people enjoyed school better back then than they do now. And in fact, there's an account by Representative John Lewis, who attended a Rosenwald school, who said that he absolutely loved school, no matter if he did good or not. And he said that at his Rosenwald school, there was a local library, a small library, but one that he cherished. And he said that there were many biographies that he enjoyed reading when he was younger. But anyways, Mr. Rosenwald spent around $300,000 a year paying for these schools. And the funding and the building of these schools continued from 1913 to 1940. And when we look at the history of all these Rosenwald schools, we see that they were apparent not only here in South Carolina, but also in Tennessee, in Alabama, in Georgia, and you've had people shocked that there were other Rosenwald schools outside their own counties. In fact, we have Rosenwald schools in Pomeria, in Newberry County. We have those in around Clarendon County, in Columbia, South Carolina. Like nearby, you have the Pomeria Garmany Elementary School, which was a Rosenwald school. And then you also have Hope Rosenwald School, which is around here in Newberry County. And the reason why it got that name was that a man of the name of Mr. Hope had bought the land around where Hope Rosenwald School was built, and it was named after him. And the fact that this happened really shows that we should not always paint like a radical picture when we're talking about history, because as we know, history is the study of human beings and how they react to certain things. But the thing is that we should also look at how human nature is capable of doing good things, and I think that Mr. Julius Rosenwald is proof of that. And with that out of the way, I would also like to talk about African history. Now, African history is something that many people say that rarely gets a spotlight, but I would like to briefly talk about how African history has a role in today's world. You see with African civilizations such as ancient Egypt, ancient Sudan, which were very well received. African history, like the greatest thing about African history is the study of African civilizations. As I mentioned before, you have ancient Egypt, ancient Sudan, and then you also have, as I said before, the Kingdom of Kush. You also have the Malian Empire, and then you also have ancient Ghana. You also have the Songhai Empire. You also have the Kingdom of Borneo, and then you also have the Kingdom of Oyo, the Kingdom of Ile-Ife, and etc. And how this plays into what I'm talking about is that it also shows that human beings are capable of creating such sophisticated civilizations, and how they are able to do great things, because we have the stereotype that people of African descent have come from people who have done nothing, and that is something that is exceedingly false that we should eradicate in today's world. And hopefully, with all these scholars researching African history, all of this attention to civilizations such as the empire of medieval Mali, people like Mansa Musa, people like Queen Candace, people like Queen Amana Shakato, people like Mr. John Lewis, people like Mr. Kwame Nkrumah, with all these people that we hear about in today's world, we can further show that people of African descent come from great people, and that their ancestors were very brilliant, very strong, strengthful, and it really speaks how we all come from great people. Every one of us has ancestors that we can be proud of, whether in scholarship or sports or in philosophy, anything that you can name. All of us come from great people, and that's why I just wanted to show with all of you. And I hope that we can further study African history, and I hope that I didn't talk for too long, but I just wanted to share a bit of what I know, and I hope that all of you take care and have a good one. God bless. Happy Juneteenth.